All right, so today let's take a deep dive into something I think we're all interested in, becoming more charismatic communicators.
hmm So good.
Yeah, and we've got this really cool French blog post as our source this time around,
Okay.
and it's titled 10 Points to Become a Charismatic Communicator. But we're not going to just like go through each point like a list or anything. We're going to dig into why. Why are these 10 things so important?
I like that approach. Get into the meat of it.
Exactly. And plus, get this, we're going to unpack this little anecdote from the author about how he uses stories from his adventures, get this, with Sping in his speeches.
With Sting. What?
Yeah, so I'm already kind of intrigued. But before we get to Sting, I guess maybe we should start with, what this charisma thing even is.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah.
I think you'll find that this deep dive is really insightful because it challenges this common misconception that charisma is all about being charming or eloquent. It goes way deeper than that.
Right. Yeah, like I always think of like a used car salesman when I think of charisma.
Yeah, exactly. But that's not really what we're talking about here. At its core, charisma is about making authentic connections with people.
Okay.
It's about having a passionate vision that you can share with others and inspiring trust in the people you're communicating with.
So it's less about performing and more about genuinely being present and engaged with the people you're talking to.
Exactly.
Okay, so that makes sense. But how do we actually do that? How do we translate that into like actionable steps?
Well, the author lays out these 10 key points, and they all build on this foundation of authenticity and connection.
Okay.
And one of the points that might surprise you is how important active listening is.
Wait, to be a charismatic speaker, I have to focus on listening. How does that work?
Yeah, it seems a little counterintuitive at first,
Yeah.
but think about it. When someone really listens to us, we feel seen and understood.
Yeah.
And that builds trust and connection, which are essential for charismatic communication. It's about making the other person feel like they're the only one in the room.
So it's not just about waiting for my turn to talk.
Right.
So what are some ways that I can become a better active listener?
Well, there's a few techniques that the author suggests. One is to rephrase what someone says to you to make sure you understand them.
Okay.
Another is to ask open-ended questions. That way you're encouraging them to elaborate and share more of their thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
And this one might be a little tricky for you, but allowing silences for reflection.
Silences. Yeah, that's definitely not my strong suit. I tend to just fill all the gaps in the conversation.
I understand. But strategic silence can be incredibly powerful. It creates a sense of intimacy and allows both the speaker and the listener to think more deeply.
Yeah, that's true. It's like in music, sometimes a well-placed pause can be more impactful than like a flurry of notes.
Exactly.
Speaking of using our voice effectively, the next point in this blog post is all about nonverbal communication. It's like our bodies are basically instruments too, right?
Precisely. And just like a musician needs to master their instrument, we need to be aware of the signals we're sending with our body language. Things like open posture, genuine eye contact, purposeful gestures. These can all amplify the message we're trying to get across.
Right. And of course, there's the power of a genuine smile. I feel like a smile can totally change the energy of an interaction.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
The author actually cautions against anything that feels inauthentic, like a forced smile, for example.
Yeah, those say cheese smiles. Definitely not charismatic.
Exactly. It's like trying to play a beautiful melody on an out-of-tune instrument. It's
Yeah.
just not going to have the same impact.
Okay, so we've got active listening, body language. What else makes a communicator really stand out?
Well, the next point focuses on vocal delivery. It's not just what you say, but how you say it.
Mm-hmm.
You know how like a flat monotone voice can just suck the energy out of even the most interesting topic?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So a charismatic communicator uses their voice as an instrument, varying their intonation to emphasize key points, using a calm, steady voice to inspire confidence, and even incorporating strategic silence for impact.
Okay, so it's not just about like avoiding ums and ahs. It's about using your voice to create an experience for the listener.
Exactly.
That makes sense. But what if I just feel nervous when I have to speak? How do I project confidence if I don't feel it on the inside?
That's where point number 5 comes in, building unshakable confidence.
Yeah.
And the author really emphasizes that confidence is a skill. It's not something you're born with. It's something you develop through practice.
So it's not about faking it till you make it.
Not exactly. Preparation is key.
Yeah.
Knowing your material inside out, anticipating potential questions, rehearsing your delivery.
Mm-hmm.
These all contribute to a sense of calm and control when you're speaking.
That makes sense. Like the more prepared I am, the less likely I am to get flustered.
Exactly.
But what about those pre-speech jitters? Any advice on how to deal with those?
Yeah, the author suggests some practical techniques like deep breathing
Okay.
and adopting a confident posture, even if you don't feel it yet. You know the mind-body connection is powerful. So even if you're nervous on the inside, standing tall and making eye contact can signal to your brain that you've got this.
So you're basically tricking your brain into feeling more confident. I like it.
Yeah.
So we've covered authenticity, active listening, body language, using our voice, and building confidence. What about the content of our message? How do we make sure it's engaging and it resonates with the audience?
Well, that's where the next point comes in. Crafting a compelling message.
Uh-huh.
And the author uses this really clever analogy to illustrate this. He says, imagine you're leading someone through a maze. If the path is clear and straightforward, they'll follow you with ease.
Right.
But if it's confusing and convoluted, they'll quickly get lost and frustrated.
So a rambling message is like a confusing maze?
Exactly. So the author recommends a clear structure for your message. Start with an attention-grabbing introduction to hook your audience. Then present your arguments logically, using examples and evidence to support your points.
Mm-hmm.
And then finally, summarize your key takeaways concisely. And here's where it gets really interesting. He also suggests using storytelling and personal anecdotes to make the message more relatable and memorable.
Oh, so this must be where the Sting stories come in.
You got it. He mentions using anecdotes from his adventures with Sting to illustrate points in his speeches. Now, he doesn't actually go into detail about what those adventures were.
Oh, man.
But it does raise an interesting question. What stories could you tell that would resonate with your audience and make your message unforgettable?
Yeah, that's a great question. It makes me think about the power of personal experiences to connect with others on a deeper level.
Right.
But what about tailoring our message to different audiences? What works for one group might not work for another.
You're absolutely right. And that's the focus of the next point, tailoring your approach. The author emphasizes how important it is to know your audience, their expectations, their needs, their interests. It's about making conscious choices about the language you use, the examples you give, even the type of humor you incorporate.
So, like, if I'm presenting to a group of scientists, I probably wouldn't use the same slang I would with my friends.
Exactly. It's about reading the room and adapting accordingly.
Right.
And it goes beyond just choosing the right words.
Mm-hmm.
The author actually encourages people to use interactive elements, like asking questions or inviting the audience to participate, turn your monologue into a dialogue.
Yeah, it's like the difference between attending a lecture and participating in a lively conversation.
Exactly.
Engagement is key. But let's be realistic. Even the most charismatic speakers are going to face objections or pushback at some point. How do we handle that gracefully without losing our cool?
That's where point number 9 comes in, handling objections with elegance. The key is to stay calm, listen attentively to the objection, and then rephrase it back to the person to make sure you understand their perspective.
It's almost like you're using active listening techniques, but for disagreements. It shows you're taking their concerns seriously. You're not just dismissing them.
Right.
But how do we actually respond to those objections in a way that's effective?
Well, the author highlights the importance of avoiding defensiveness. Instead, you want to see objections as opportunities. Opportunities to clarify your message, expand on a point, or even acknowledge a valid criticism.
So you're turning a potential conflict into a constructive conversation. I like that. So we've covered so much already. Authenticity, active listening, body language, how we use our voice, confidence, crafting a message, tailoring it to the audience, and even handling objections with grace. What's the final piece of the puzzle?
Well, the final point is kind of a reminder that becoming a more charismatic communicator isn't like a one-time achievement. It's an ongoing journey. The author stresses the importance of consistent practice.
So there's no magic formula or like overnight transformation. It's all about continually refining our skills.
Exactly. The author encourages us to view every opportunity to speak as a chance to practice, whether it's a formal presentation, a casual conversation, or even just rehearsing in front of the mirror.
It's like anything else we want to get better at, from playing an instrument to mastering a new recipe. We have to put in the time and effort to see improvement.
Right.
But what about those moments when we stumble or words get jumbled and we feel like we totally bombed? How do we deal with those setbacks without getting discouraged?
Well, that's where the real learning happens.
Yeah.
The author actually encourages us to view those mistakes not as failures, but as valuable feedback. It's about analyzing what worked, what didn't, and using that to improve next time.
It's about having that growth mindset and not letting those setbacks define us. But putting yourself out there, especially when you're still developing your skills, can be intimidating. Any advice on how to overcome that initial fear and just go for it?
Hmm. Well, the author doesn't address this specifically, but I think one strategy is to start small. Instead of diving headfirst into like a high-pressure presentation, maybe look for lower stakes opportunities to practice.
Hmm.
Volunteer to give a quick update at a team meeting or offer a toast at a casual gathering. Build up those communication muscles gradually before taking on a marathon.
That's a great point. And as we gain experience, that initial fear starts to subside. Confidence comes with practice, right?
Exactly. And remember, even the most seasoned speakers probably felt those nerves at the beginning of their journey.
It's reassuring to remember that everyone starts somewhere.
Yeah. Nobody's born a charismatic communicator, right?
Right.
It's a skill you hone over time with practice.
That's a great point. So much of what we've been talking about just comes down to practice and just getting better over time. It's not about reaching some level of charisma, but it's about just getting better and learning as you go.
Exactly. And you know what? That brings us to the final and maybe the most important point from this blog post. Consistent practice.
Okay.
This author, he really emphasizes that becoming a better communicator isn't about reaching some destination. It's a journey. It's a process.
So it's not like you reach some finish line and you're like, I'm charismatic.
Right.
It's something that you just keep working on.
Exactly. It's about incorporating these principles into everything you do every day
Right.
and always striving to improve. It's about seeking out opportunities to practice your skills,
Okay.
whether that's giving a presentation at work or having a tough conversation with a family member or even just practicing in front of the mirror. Every interaction is a chance to get better.
I like that. Finding your voice and getting better. It suggests that there's no one right way to be charismatic. It's more about just being yourself and connecting with other people authentically.
Absolutely. It's
Yeah.
about figuring out what works for you, what feels natural to your personality and your own communication style. And that brings us back to that author's story about using anecdotes from his adventures with Sting in his speeches.
Oh, yeah. The Sting stories. I've been wondering about that. I mean, it seems like such a weird detail to include in a blog post about charisma, but it really shows how powerful storytelling can be to make a point and make people remember it.
Yeah, super unexpected, right?
Yeah.
And it creates intrigue. Now, he doesn't actually tell us what those Sting stories are, which is kind of a bummer.
I know, I want to know.
But he uses them as an example of how personal stories can help people connect with and remember your message.
Right. It makes me think about what my Sting stories would be. What stories from my life I could share with other people.
Exactly. And it doesn't have to be about celebrities or anything fancy. It's about those universal human experiences that everyone can relate to.
Yeah.
A funny story from your childhood or a time when you overcame a challenge,
Yeah.
even just an observation about everyday life.
Yeah.
The important thing is to find those moments that say something about you as a person. Moments that connect with people.
I like that. It's not about trying to be someone you're not, but finding those genuine things about yourself that you could connect with people on.
Exactly.
It's so true, though, finding those stories and being able to, tell them to connect with people. But I think a lot of people just don't share their stories. They just don't speak up, and it's because they're afraid of what other people will think.
Yeah, that fear of judgment can be really tough to overcome. But I think it's important to remember that everyone in the room, even the people who look super confident, have probably felt that same fear at some point.
Yeah, it's like that saying, everyone you meet is fighting a battle you know nothing about.
Exactly.
We're all human, we all have insecurities, and we all just want to be liked, right?
Right.
So maybe instead of trying to be perfect, we should focus on just being relatable.
I love that. Embracing vulnerability can be so powerful. It really connects you with people. People can tell when someone is being genuine, and that makes them way more open to what you're saying.
It's like taking off a mask and just letting people see the real you.
Yeah,
And I think when we do that, it gives other people permission to do the same.
absolutely.
It creates this space for honest communication.
Exactly. And when we shift our focus from trying to impress everyone to just connecting with them, that fear of judgment starts to fade away.
Yeah.
You're not performing anymore. You're just having a conversation.
Right, and that's where active listening comes in. It's not about waiting for your turn to talk, but really listening to the other person and responding to what they're saying, even if you don't agree with them.
Active listening is huge for building relationships and understanding. It shows the other person that you respect their opinion, even if it's different from your own.
It's like you're saying, I see you, I hear you, and I respect you.
Exactly. And when you communicate with that kind of attitude, it changes the whole dynamic. It's not about winning or losing an argument anymore. It's about working together.
I think that's a perfect way to sum up this whole deep dive. Charisma isn't about being perfect or putting on some kind of show. It's about being present, being yourself, and actually wanting to connect with other people.
Couldn't have said it better myself. It's about working on those communication skills and remembering that even the best communicators are still learning and getting better all the time.
It's a journey. You've got to enjoy the ride and find your own voice.
And who knows, maybe along the way you'll have some cool adventures to tell people about. Maybe not with Sting, but with people you care about.
That's a great point. So to wrap things up, I want to leave you with this. What's your story? What experiences have shaped the way you see the world? And what can you share that will connect with other people? Find your voice, practice those communication skills, and never underestimate the power of connecting with other people.
Couldn't agree more.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us for this deep dive into charismatic communication. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep connecting.
Sounds good.